It's 1:30. I'd like to call the Friday, January 23rd, 2015 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Commission to order. Roll call, Commissioner Witcher.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Littlefield.
Present.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Jenkins. Commissioner George. Here. And Commissioner Yockel.
Here.
Thank you. Can I have a motion concerning the minutes of the December 15th, 2014 meeting, please?
I move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Jenkins.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schuline. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the December 15, 2014 meeting from Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Votes, please. Okay, item is approved. Item 3, report on licensing and traffic meeting. The quarterly report from October, November, and December will be presented. We're ready for you. You're on.
Good afternoon.
First one.
First one.
All right, give it to us.
The quarterly report's going to be on taxi and shuttles. We had 48 new permits, 76 renews, 43 transfers, 1 duplicate. On the inspections, 51 passed, 8 failed, 4 complaints, 4 investigations, 1 field inspection, and 3 citations on those. On limousines, we had 39 new permits, 3 renewals, 1 duplicate. On inspections, 4 passed, 2 failed. On carriages, we had 5 new permits, 3 renewals. And on pedicabs, we had 4 new permits, 8 renewals, 1 duplicate. And on inspections, we had 3 passed, 1 failed, 1 complaint, 1 investigation. Have any questions on those?
Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the report? Yes, sir.
I do have a question. I'm curious. In the cab ordinance language, there's to be posted an action center contact phone number, I believe.
Correct.
If a rider were to witness or suspect that a driver was intoxicated or under the influence of drugs and made a complaint to the Action Center, what happens after that?
They contact us and we do an investigation.
What's the extent of the investigation?
We talk to all parties involved. We do a report and we do our investigation and we put the complaint together.
Because there's language in the ordinance that the cab industry has to provide or have in place a drug testing program.
Correct.
What criteria would be necessary for that particular cab company to follow through with the drug test of a particular driver?
Well, when they present their permits to get a new permit or renewal, the new permits or renewal permits, they give us all that information, and it says there's a drug test and then there's a physical put on there, and then the date and all that stuff. And then if it all passes, then we have a city form that we have them fill out too, saying that they're able to drive, and then we give them the permit at that point.
So then, am I understanding correctly that the purpose for the drug testing program is when they're hired?
Correct.
More so with the assumption that because that's in place, there are going to be drivers that are not going to be liable.
If they're driving intoxicated, that's what you presented, correct? Okay, that's DUI. So, the citizen at that point can call 911 and have an officer pull them over, which would be a DUI, or if they wait, then they file the complaint with us.
Okay, that's the clarity I was looking for. The rider can call 911.
Correct.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, there's no items on the consent docket, item 4, so we move to item 5. Item 5A, Star Cab LLC, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73109. Consider an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity from Star Cab LLC, doing business as Star Cab Van, to operate 120 vehicles in taxi service. Is there anybody here to speak on item 5A? Yes, sir. Have you filled out one of the forms yet?
I did. I didn't put Star Cab on it, but I did fill out the form.
You are on there? Okay. All right, if you could come up and have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Carl Gaskins. My address is 1424 Northwest 28th Street, and I don't think they should be approved on this. The color scheme that they're showing is exactly the same as an existing color scheme for Star Cab that they're operating right now. History shows us that the policy, being that a different company has to have a different color scheme, different look to it, has to be distinctive. There was companies, Oklahoma Shuttle and Lightning Express, owned by the same entity. Color schemes had to be different, had to be distinctive. If those companies had to do it, I think Star needs to do it too. That's it.
Thank you. Anybody else to speak on item 5A? Could you let the record show that Commissioner George is here now? Thank you. All right, so item 5A, can we have staff input, please?
Okay, you've got the completed application before you. At the last meeting, the commission directed us to try and make contact with the applicant. We'd sent them several email messages. I know that Sergeant Dancy had placed a call informing them to come, and as early as the beginning of this week, we had spoken directly with the applicant, reiterating the fact that he would need to be here to help address questions. But you've got the application before you, and action will be at the discretion of the commission.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion concerning item 5A, please?
I move that the application be denied.
Okay, we have a motion to deny item 5A from Commissioner Jenkins. We have a second. We have a second from Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have any discussion? Okay.
Is the applicant present?
Is the applicant present? No, sir. There's nobody here. No, there's no one else to speak for item 5A.
Okay, because the applicant in this case for Star Cab Van is Bob Tahiri. Is there anyone here representing Mr. Tahiri? Okay, doesn't look like it.
Okay. Any other discussion on 5A? Okay, we have a motion to disapprove item 5A from Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is disapproved. We go on to item 5B. Lyft, Inc., San Francisco, California, 94104, to consider an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity from Lyft, Inc. to operate a transportation network company. Do we have anybody here to speak on item 5A? Let's go first from Lyft. Anybody here from Lyft that would like to speak on this item? I mean 5B. Okay, is there anybody who would like to speak about item 5B? Yes, sir. Again, name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes, please.
Okay. I already gave my name and address, Carl Gaskins, 1424 Northwest 28th.
Thank you.
Okay. On these transportation network companies, I've got concerns about the insurance. Apparently, it's like an app-on, app-off type of thing. We've seen, witnessed some of these people, since their cars are carrying the company address sometimes. I think it'll be required later, but right now they're showing it sometimes. They take flags. They'll be in Bricktown or somewhere like that, and people hail them, and they stop and get them, and they go. Under those situations, there is no insurance, because the insurance seems like it only applies while the app is on. And that is a concern. I think it'd be a matter of enforcement, but so far it's just been very difficult there. And I've not looked at Lyft as closely as I have with Uber, but it seems like the drug testing policies are a bit lacking also. We need to be more certain on those that, they're being tested properly and have some type of background to look at. That's all I got to say.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on item 5B? Okay, can we have staff input, please? Well, one moment, I'm sorry. We have another one? Okay. Yes, sir. So if I could have your name, your address.
Yeah, okay.
You have up to 5 minutes. And-
Thank you.
And have
Good
you already
after-
filled out one of these?
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Charles Cotton. I'm the owner of VIP Limousine Company here in the state of Oklahoma. We want to ask you to delay this vote today on this company's application. And the reason, many reasons, we had placed an Open Records Act request some time ago in order to get the copies of the applications, the insurance policy, all documentation. As most of you probably know, there's this is a huge national issue. Now it's worldwide, not so much with Lyft as it is with Uber. But we have some concerns because we just have not had an opportunity to do the due diligence that is necessary, and the other concerns that have been raised the last 2 days. Because we pulled up these applications online that you all provided, or I guess here a couple of days ago. It's the first time we've seen all this, and obviously there's an awful lot of questions regarding the insurance, particularly this company called Razor, which is, that'll be the next session, the next guy. But when you look through the certificates of insurance and those policies that we have been able to put our hands on from other courts around the country that have subpoenaed these policies, there's an awful lot of questions. It's very questionable whether the passenger is actually insured. These are all general liability surplus line policies. I have already, in the last 2 days, I have 2 expert opinions on these policies, and we'd like to present those at some point during this due diligence. The drivers clearly are not covered, and above all, the public, which is both the driver and the passenger, they have to be protected. That's why we have regulations. There's 107 companies here in Oklahoma that we all comply fully with the laws of Oklahoma. And these companies are welcome. We certainly welcome competition as long as everything's fair and square and that the public is protected. That's the main thing. The other issue is about Section 53-3. It clearly states that they have to have, these applicants, an Oklahoma Corporation permit. They have not applied, and the Oklahoma Corporation Commission has taken supposedly a position that they are not going to rule on Title 47 and Section 165, 1 through 30 of the Oklahoma Corporation Commission rules and regs. They have deferred it over to the state legislature. Well, this makes no sense. Therefore, that raises just all kinds of questions, and legal questions also. Therefore, we have submitted to Scott Pruitt, Attorney General, for a ruling, because we feel this is his position in order to rule on, the state statutes and other laws, so forth. What the Matt Skinner, I had a conversation again this morning with him, who's the spokesman for OCC, and he's clearly said, of course he's not an attorney, nor am I, but he said that the driver must comply with the insurance and the rules and the regs. Now, the question of these so-called app companies, he can't rule on that. But he said definitely what's in writing and in these laws that the drivers. So my point is, and the question is, then the drivers are individual businessmen. They're either a sole proprietor, they're either a corporation, or they're a partnership. Whatever that legal entity is going to be, they're going to have, I would think, according to the law, and it would be the same here in this law, perhaps, in the city ordinance, then they have to apply as a businessman with their own company. Their vehicle, they're operating, they're going to have the proper insurance in order to comply with these laws. So therefore, we ask you to delay the vote today. Let's get all the facts on the table, give the rest of us an opportunity to make sure, to help, make sure the public is protected. There's no rush on this. Let's see what the Attorney General is going to rule, and we would like to have that opportunity to do the due diligence and present that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, is there anybody else that wishes to speak on item 5B? Okay. Can we have staff input, please?
Okay, well, you've got an application before you. The applicant has responded to all the items that are listed under 56-264. The only thing staff would offer that in granting the certificate of public convenience and necessity, the commission is responsible for investigating whether the applicant has complied with the application requirements and has the ability to comply with the requirements of the article. So action on this item will be at the discretion of the commission.
Thank you. And I have a motion concerning item 5B, please.
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have a second? We have a second from Commissioner George. Okay, anybody want to talk about this item? Ma'am?
I think Mr. Cotton brings up some excellent points. There's not a hurry. What's going on in the marketplace is going to continue going on in the marketplace, I'm sure. But there, I have to agree, it seems like there's a lot that we don't know. My question, though, maybe this is for council, is some of the questions that Mr. Cotton raises, are they in another bucket? Attorney General decisions, legislature decisions. Is this some other bucket that exists managing the business and expectations from the business? Is it so separate from ours that we are going parallel paths? Or should there not be some sort of, do we wait to find out about those more prevailing entities before we make decisions here? This is just, I'm a layman. I'm not a counselor. So if it needs to be handled separately, then let's handle it separately. But it feels like there should be, I think it's prudent to get a bigger set of information before we proceed. I personally I don't like some of the answers of the 11 questions. I don't think a policy saying we don't have a policy on drug testing is a policy. Maybe that needs to be tweaked in some language. I don't know. Maybe that's an ordinance change possibly, but I'm not happy with that. It's not about making me happy, I understand. So I just feel like I feel like there's some loose ends, and that we may be, although it's one more delay, and I'm sure being the Lyft folks and the Uber folks or the Razier folks, whoever is applying, really doesn't want to see another delay. But I have to agree, what's 30 more days? What's 60 more days on top of the 18 months or whatever that this has been struggling about in the marketplace? So, are we a separate bucket working parallel paths with Attorney General matters, or is it not most prudent to delay a vote? I guess at this point we can't because a motion's been made. But I'm learning. But that's where I am on this. I just feel like, do we have all the facts upon which to make a good vote for the sake of the safety of the person that's going to hire this driver? That's what I'm not sure about.
Well, so, ma'am, is there enough to answer there, or do you want something more specific as a question, comment? Ma'am?
I was actually going to say that I hear two questions that you're asking.
There's probably more in there, and they're not specific. This is a complicated. I find it complicated. Maybe it's easy to everybody else, but I don't even know how to ask. There's not one simple, easy question. I'll try to make one. Do we delay because we need Attorney General decisions if there is something out there? Do we have the right information upon which to vote? Or if we vote today, which we're going to have to vote, and something comes down from the Attorney General that unravels whatever we just vote on, that doesn't feel productive, because I tell you what, communicating one time is important correctly. Recommunicating a change is very difficult. So we go one path, and then something comes down from the Attorney General, then we have to recommunicate. That feels messier. So that's my question. Anybody understand it?
Let me try and answer, and let me know if I do or not. You have sufficient amount of information before you to answer the application question. Has everything been responded to? Has the ordinance requirements been met? You have enough information before you to determine that at this moment. In order to defer and wait upon a state entity to make a determination, if they will make a determination, when they make a determination, is at this point an unknown. We don't know if they will determine to respond to it. We don't know when they will. So I see your point. A 30-day delay doesn't seem like a big deal. An undetermined delay, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So just in a general way here, we spent 18 months, the city, taxi companies, limo companies, transportation vehicle network companies, drivers, et cetera, to create the ordinance. The ordinance has been approved, and now we have our first application that meets the ordinance, and that's what's in front of us.
That is what's before you, yes.
Correct. And if there are specific questions that if it does or doesn't meet the ordinance, we can ask that to make sure that we're pressing along and it meets the requirement of the ordinance. But we have an application right in front of us that, as the city staff and the council has said, meets the ordinance, of which the ordinance that we recommended and worked on and sent to the city council that they approved. So is there any other talk on this item? Yes, sir.
I understand that they have responded by saying we don't have this drug testing program in place. That's an answer, and that meets the ordinance. But I'm not sure that, that's really the intent of the ordinance, is to say we need this response, and our response is we don't have it. So I'm not sure that it really fulfills the intent. So I've got some real concerns about that.
Council?
I didn't hear a question. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was that a question? Okay.
No? Okay, not a question. All right. So the concern on your part is, does stating that there's no drug test, initial drug test policy that we've seen in the past, that companies come and they say, yes, before they can drive and before we allow to work with them, they'll go test and we'll see the results and then we'll hire them or allow them to work with our cab company, limo company, et cetera.
Even the application for the Star Van that was just denied, they had a very elaborate outline of their testing procedures.
Before they hire, but before they allow somebody to work with them.
That's correct. And this is something I believe that the cab companies currently engage in very extensively and have some costs associated with that. I'm not sure if a cab company a year ago would have come to us and said, I know this is ordinance and this is how we're going to respond to it, and we're just not going to have a program. if they were to be approved. And it seems like that's what we're looking at today.
Well, we could, if we talk about it here and decide that the intent of the ordinance, when we say what is your drug testing policy, is what do you do to drug test, like actually what is it to test, then that could be a determination that we agree upon, and that would be a reason to deny the application. But they did answer saying that they're not. And if that's a wording issue in the ordinance that's wrong, then we just have to refer to council and the staff to say, in the next revisions of the ordinance, could you please make that wording a little bit more structured, or a little bit more clear of what our intent is. So that would be up to us to decide, does their drug testing policy as written comply with the ordinance as written? And if we say it doesn't, that by not having a testing procedure is not drug testing, if we say that, well, then we would have a reason to disapprove. But if we say they answer the questions and they have a policy, it's just that there is no drug testing at the start. We do answer questions if there's a complaint, we do investigate, we do notify, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that initial drug testing, that seems to be the thing that you're concerned about, is that initial, before they make a relationship with that company, they go somewhere and they do a test to see that they're clean. If that is not our intent, if that's not how we read the ordinance to be, well, then that would be something to say. Okay, so any other discussion on this item? Ma'am?
The gentleman brought up a question in regards to the Attorney General, but am I reading this correct where it says, as required under the law, the applicant provided a copy of their certificate of authority as issued by the Office of the Secretary of State? So I don't see why we would go to the Attorney General if this has been provided by the company.
I believe the gentleman was discussing a separate issue, not recognition or registration. I would have to defer to him and his intention.
As far as the company, they went and got their Oklahoma Commission license. That's required to be submitted with this application. So it meets the requirement from the ordinance. Okay, right. Okay. Anybody else on this side? Okay, on this side. Yes, sir.
I need some clarity from council. There was an established set of requirements that these particular type of transportation industries were required to have fulfilled in order to apply for a license to be heard at this body. Where is the vagueness in the drug testing? If it didn't answer the requirement, then how could it have accomplished to this level today? I'm not understanding is it complete according to what the ordinance requires?
The ordinance has 11 requirements. All 11 requirements from the LIFT application have been responded to. There is a response for all questions or subsection G. And that is how it got to your meeting today.
So in order for it to be heard at this body, they just have to respond to one of those elements? They don't have to actually have a drug policy in place at the time?
The ordinance states that the policy shall include the 11 requirements. Those 11 requirements were included and were responsive to our ordinance.
Which is where I'm going, that if it is determined that the ordinance was not clear enough to require initial drug testing, then that's something that would have to be fixed later. But the issue is they have answered in their drug policy all the requirements.
Does the same requirement apply to the current TNC industry, taxi cab and limousine industry?
Was that question to me?
Yes.
The same subsection G, is it within both articles? Yes. It's the exact same terminology, wording on both articles.
So either form of industry could respond identically? Okay, thank you. It's my opinion that this body worked very hard, listened to many, many folks over the past, I'd say probably year, and we're concerned enough that we asked to send a resolution to City Council that they take action, and an ordinance was drafted, was scrutinized by this body, it was approved by this body, it was sent to City Council with a couple of adjustments. It came back, those adjustments were approved, and it was sent back to Council, and it was approved. And there may be vaguenesses in anything. I think what the transportation companies came to us for was an effort to find a balanced and fair playing field. And it's my opinion that after having been approved here, having been approved at council, to delay an industry that has come before this body to ask for licensing because of ultra scrutiny of these elements is delaying what the transportation industry was asking us to do. I'm impressed, given the rumor and the things that I've read over the past several months about the TNC industry, that they're here today at all. There were some folks that were saying that they don't even file at the Secretary of State, where they're required to do that in certain states, and these folks have done that. I'm also a believer that when ordinances are written and groups of folks like all of us and other commissions and councils in our city, when something does fall short of being effective, there are tools, devices, avenues, and processes to go back and relook at those individual things and change them if they are a problem. Now, my view today is these folks have walked the walk, and we've provided a product that, in my view, appears to be satisfactory to the existing transportation vehicle for hire industry in this city, and I'm going to vote approval.
Okay. Sir?
Both of the T&V applicants today have the same response on the drug testing. And if it's good for the T&V, we could expect that future cab, limo companies adopt that same lack of policy and with the way the ordinance is written. I agree that we've gone through extensive procedures and such with the intent that we were creating a level playing field, recognizing that there's different business models out there. I'm concerned that we suddenly don't have exactly a level playing field in terms of how these drivers responding to safety of the public that they're carrying. They're carrying the same public, whether they engage them with an app or by flagging them down on the street. They're carrying the same public. And I think that accepting these applications on that basis, we're going to create an unlevel playing field that will soon be leveled by the other cab companies and limo companies who adopt a non-policy for drug testing.
So it's your opinion that the Traffic Commission, the city, should require, and make it clearly required, that before a driver starts driving for a company, working with a company, that they be tested?
I think it's the intent and the historical understanding with the cab and limo companies was that there be a drug testing policy in place. And I understand it's a different animal because the T&V companies are not providing the car, and the drivers are only on their, working for the T&V for these sporadic time periods. So I understand that we're trying to address a different business model, but the intent and the historical understanding is that when you're driving, you're carrying the public, that there's this safeguard of of not being, as best as we could provide it, of not using drugs and alcohol, and that not being a factor in carrying the public. Does that answer your question?
Well, it's just, yeah, if we were, so the issue that's on the table here for this motion is dealing with the initial drug test, that their policy does not require an initial drug test. Is that the issue of concern?
That's not the whole issue.
Okay, what else we got?
My seat.
Okay, what else you got?
It's a general, because I completely agree with Commissioner Littlefield said. There has been a lot of work done. And I feel like at the last hour, that the response of our policy is to not have a policy. I feel like that is unacceptable because of all the work that has been done and a lot of due diligence with a lot of hours from many, many people and many resources. I feel like these responses are a bit of a joke. That's a harsh word, but I feel like it's not responding in the spirit in which the questions and expectations are set, and that bothers me. I just feel like it's a little bit of a disregard for coming in the front door to our marketplace in a legitimate, cooperative manner. I feel like it's snubbing the nose at safety, and that bothers me. Chaps me, actually. So I completely agree with what you're saying. But, and it's not just an upfront testing. I think that, well, I don't know that in 3 minutes we can say, just tweak it here, here, and here, go change the ordinance in 3 ways, and then we're good. It's an upfront testing, it's an ongoing testing, it's a testing policy when there is any suspected people who know how to do this stuff need to weigh in on it. But it's not just an upfront and then you're off and running for the next 3 years. There's some sort of due diligence that I think is expected in the 11 questions. And I feel like it's been disregarded. So yes, as much as I would like to say, oh, this feels good, we're now at the next chapter and we can vote and feel good about it and let's move on down the road, we could have if the responses were satisfactory. To me, they're not satisfactory. So it's not just an upfront testing. It's an ongoing assurance because the same people are hiring these vehicles that are hiring the cabs. You make an excellent point. I love when people can say things much more concisely than I can. So it's not upfront. It's some sort of well-intended, in the spirit of public safety, process that says, from the companies, we not only expect, but we're going to follow through and provide proof that our drivers are not under the influence of something that's going to make an unsafe transportation. That is the spirit of the 11 questions. I think that the answers are not in the spirit of the questions. So it's not up front, it's ongoing to me. I may be alone in that, and I'm fine being alone.
Yes, sir.
Having an opportunity to speak is just a wonderful thing about our country and our city. You know, that's why these decisions get made intelligently, hopefully. My issue is that the current vehicle for hire industry can answer that question the same way, apparently. And simply because none have chosen to do that doesn't necessarily mean that they give it any more credit than what this application is doing. To me, that's the fallacy. The question today isn't, is this application more serious about drug testing than anybody else is? Because there's obviously something's missing if the intent of this body is for vehicle for hire drivers to be drug tested, then obviously it's not written clearly enough that happens. And at the onset of this hearing, I asked the question, what happens when somebody is riding in a car and they notice that the driver is drunk? What you call the action center, you call 911. What I was trying to discover was, we immediately go back to that cab company and we pull that driver out of the car and we take him in and we force that company to do a drug test on him and we look at the results. And apparently that's not what happens. So I totally am in sympathy with what you're saying, but what we are looking for here is a balance for these two different types of vehicle for hire industries. And it's unfortunate, you've pointed out, that part of the balance is that all they have to do is answer that one question. They don't really have to have a drug enforcement policy. So the question before me today is, has this applicant fulfilled the requirements of what we have all established? And in my view, they have. If there's a fallacy with one of them, then the next step on this commission may be work on a resolution or something to review that one element and make that across the board for the entire vehicle for industry companies. It has to have more teeth. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody for discussion on this side?
I'd just say that Rob has stated it correctly twice now, that we set up the playing field, they played by the rules that we set up, and I just think you just have to, you can vote however you want, but I think a yes vote is the correct vote in this situation, but that's just me.
Okay. So we got this side. Any further discussion on this side? Okay. We have a motion for item 5B, a motion from Commissioner Littlefield, seconded by Commissioner George, to approve. Let's have your votes for item 5B. Item is approved. Okay, we go on to item 5C. Razor LLC, San Francisco, California, 94103, to consider an application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity from Razor LLC to operate a transportation network company. Do you have anybody here to speak on item 5C? Have you already filled out one of these, sir? Okay. If I could have your, one moment, please. Okay, it was reminded to me that in the package, it did not have the second insurance or the second insurance certificate. It is available up here and for all the commissioners also concerning Riser. Okay? Thank you. Can I have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name's Adam Drees. Address is 704 West Sheridan, Oklahoma City. Commissioners, first I'd like to thank you for allowing me the time to speak today. As I mentioned, my name's Adam Drees. I'm the general manager for Uber here in Oklahoma. My team and I work exclusively on the Oklahoma market, supporting operations here and in Tulsa. I'm here today to voice my support for the approval of our TNC license application. We appreciate the work done by you, the Commission, the City Council, the Mayor, and the City Manager's Office to ensure that ride sharing has a permanent home in Oklahoma City. In summary, we have satisfied each of the application requirements. We've worked closely with the City Manager's Office, the Police Department, the TNC inspectors to ensure that we've met these requirements and will continue to do so. We also appreciate the work done by our driver partners who now have flexible earning opportunities that they didn't have before. And over the course of the last year, Oklahoma City residents have relied on the Uber platform to get new transportation options when they otherwise might not have existed. I'd be happy to address any questions you might have, and thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, anybody else wishing to speak on item 5C? Yes, sir. Have you already filled out one of these forms?
I have.
Okay, can I have your name and your address, and you have up to 5
Yes, sir. My name is Walter Jacks. I live at 4832 Kells Drive. And first, I'd like to say this is my first time visiting this commission. I appreciate very much the dialogue that's going on, the questions that are being asked. Most honestly, I would have warm fuzzies putting my daughter in a car of somebody if I knew that they had been drug tested first. That's my personal opinion. I've been drug tested numerous times. I was in the military for 21 years. But I would like to see the level field playing in deference to the cab companies, of course, who are required to follow such policies. I drive for Uber, and I want to be fair in representing Uber as a transportation alternative. You know, it's been mentioned as a transportation solution, and it is a transportation solution. I'd like to tell you one experience I think is really exciting for Oklahoma City that I had a couple of months ago. The passenger came in. I was at Will Rogers World Airport just after 10 o'clock at night. A gentleman came in through baggage claim, and he had come in from New York City. He landed, came through baggage claim just after 10 p.m. And I got the request for his ride, and an Uber or Lyft driver, I don't know about Lyft, but Uber doesn't know where the passenger wants to go. The driver doesn't know until they pick the person up. 10 o'clock at night, he wanted to go to Weatherford. You know, it's hard enough to get out of Will Rogers World Airport just to get downtown if we'd explored public transportation alternatives, but to Weatherford. What an exciting thing that is for Oklahoma City. When somebody from New York can go back and tell his friends, I flew in Oklahoma City, cleared baggage claim, and with 1 minute, I was on my way to Weatherford. No questions asked. That's a pretty awesome thing. Last year, I had the very bad misfortune of being served by a young man in a retail store. Had a great conversation with him. 3 days later, I found out he had been killed by a drunk driver. He was 19 years old. In the last year, I have carried 40 to 50 passengers a week. And I would say that the number of people who have been incapacitated to drive that I've hauled out of Bricktown is in the hundreds. So I think that part of the weighing the value of Uber and Lyft is also not in the transportation solutions, but in the public safety solutions. We haul a lot of inebriated people out of Bricktown and get them to places safely, whether they're OU students, visitors from out of town, our own people, whatever. So I just want to say I want to support, obviously, this employer of mine, which gives me a flexible earning opportunity. But I do very much appreciate the dialogue in this commission, the questions that are asked. And again, I think that I owe it first and foremost to my passengers to get them somewhere safely, to know that they're insured, to know that whoever's taking them there has not got a drug or alcohol problem while they're driving them. And so I appreciate this dialogue. I do think, though, from what it sounds like, is that these two companies being presented have answered the questions in the applications. I think the application process perhaps is a little bit flawed and needs to be revisited for a public safety concern in Oklahoma City. But please do consider that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak on item 5C? Yes, sir. Again, name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay. Carl Gaskins, 1424 Northwest 28th Street. I've got a number of concerns with Uber. I've looked at them much more extensively than I had looked at the Lyft situation. Uber, from the minute they came into Oklahoma City, has held, I think, this is my opinion, the city government, the people of Oklahoma in contempt, looked at us with disdain. They have no respect for us. They came in, they didn't do anything to get legal. They ignored the laws. They operated all the way up till now even without having everything in place. Cab companies can't do that. Okay, I don't know why they've been allowed to operate all this time, but they've been doing it. They've never stopped. Okay, there's been a lot of things that they're lacking right now. They're not in compliance with OCC. I've reached out to them. I looked on their website. The Oklahoma Corporation Commission has nothing on file with them that I've been able to determine. If they are filed with OCC, which is required if you're going to carry passengers in Oklahoma, the only way you can get around it is if you're licensed with the city and you do not cross any municipal borders. You cross from one city to the next. You go from Oklahoma City to Nichols Hills or to Bethany. You've got to be with OCC. It's the law. And I don't see anything here for that. The cab companies all got to do it. We've got to have our paperwork when we go to downtown, but I don't see anything that they're doing any of that. Okay, the drug testing policy, we've talked about that extensively. I think it's pretty obvious that the spirit of the law, regardless of how it's worded, everybody's understood up till now, it's needed. And I don't think that it's proper to sacrifice public safety just because they found a loophole. The testing needs to be there. Cab companies have it. At Thunder Cab, there have been a number of times that somebody report, hey, we got a problem with the driver. We think he's under the influence of something. Driver gets yanked in, we send him down for testing. Unfortunately, most of the time, the driver bails out and says, I don't want to work for you no more. And they just walk away and they're no longer a problem. But those things are there, the mechanisms in place to get these guys tested when there's a report. And I don't see anything, for them to repeatedly on every question say, we don't do testing. So it seems like if somebody were to call Razor or Uber, whoever that is, and say, hey, this guy looks like he's intoxicated or he looks like he's on the drugs or whatever, they don't have anything in place to say they can pull them in and test them to find out. No way to find that out. It's not good. And the other thing is the insurance issue. I know from experience, some of the Uber drivers, maybe not everyone, especially when people can identify that they are Uber, people flag these guys down and they ride. The calls are not necessarily every single time coming through the app. With the type of insurance that they have that does not cover anything whatsoever unless they're either en route or with the passenger, a flag means no insurance at all. The private policies aren't going to cover vehicle for hire, and this is a dangerous thing. There needs to be something better on the insurance piece. Okay? We've got all this in place for taxi cabs. The laws have required it. It's about public safety. These guys have had a business model. They can cut their expenses by not complying with anything, but it puts the risk, or puts the public at a very high risk. It's just not safe. It's not good for Oklahoma. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you very much. And just so you had your hand up, he had it up, and then we'll come back to you, sir. If I could have your name and address again, please, sir, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Charles Cotton, go by Chuck. I'm the owner of VIP Limousine Company here in Oklahoma. Again, I don't want to digress a lot of my previous comments for Lyft. These two companies are distinctly different. In operations, when Uber came here and opened up, they've done nothing but bully Oklahoma from day one, as they have every other state, every city, including rural cities. They just won't comply with the laws, period. The insurance is highly controversial. They have yet to pay 53 known claims. They've yet to pay $1 or settle. There's many bans, court orders, cease and desist orders on Uber all over the United States. Just recently, in the state of Nevada, has banned them. Myself, along with a few others, we helped the local associations out there, which we do all over the United States. We got the Attorney General involved, along with the judges, in litigation, and it's a long story, but it ended up, and they got banned, even in Las Vegas. They just disregarded the ban. They're still operating every day, Las Vegas, which is one of the hottest cities in the world, for this type of transportation. South Carolina just banned them this past week, whole state. They had issues in Charleston, and this just goes on and on and on and on. I have, probably 8, 9 file boxes filled just with all types of information, lawsuits and this and that, because we're quite active with our group. on a national basis, international also now. One of the concerns here, in the Uber website, and I just pulled this out last night, this is the current, legal, okay. There is absolutely, the word razor is not even in here. Now, on the policy here, they're the insured. Well, who is Razor, LLC, Razor-CA? There's 31 of these Razor, quote, throughout the world. Who are they? They're nothing but shell corporations. No assets, nothing. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out, what's going on here, okay, on this insurance. That's why that we've asked, again, I'm going to ask to delay a vote on Uber. Give us an opportunity, the outsiders, to come in and present the credible evidence that we have. We've got tons of it to show why, their application is not valid. It's the responsibility of the Traffic Commission to do the investigation. That's what it says in the, I've read this someplace. Is that correct, Mr. Cooler? Yeah. It's your responsibility. Work with us. Because ultimately, everybody's done a great job. I've had a lot of input, thanks to M.T. Berry, in the new regulations. I voted for it. I support it, in other words. We want you to vote yes, and you did, unanimously, I remember. And the language is good. All they got to do is just comply, that's it. But they haven't. The drug testing is a joke, and on and on and on. But who is this Razor? The insurance. This is one of the real key areas. There's no relationship in the legal. So if there's an accident, an injury, or a death, the attorneys are going to come after the city of Oklahoma City. They're going to come after the state of Oklahoma. This is happening states every day. The lawyers come after everybody. And because the drivers don't have anything to get, they're insolvent. For that kind of money. I know I would be for $2 million against me. So all this needs to really, in other words, the bottom line, let's get a full deck and make these decisions with a full deck. That's the only way that you can protect the citizens of Oklahoma City as well as the state and visitors that do come in. So again, I want to urge you to consider to delay the vote on this application of Uber. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Have you filled out one of these forms yet? Okay, you.
Yeah, I did.
No, I'm sorry, not you. Have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Lewis Ridley. Live at 116 Northwest 15th Street. I'm an Uber driver. My background is I was a lead courier driver for Yellow Cab for 10 years, lead dispatcher for 3 years, operations manager over the call center the last 2 years. I resigned October 1st, became an Uber driver October 3rd. I've taken over 1,500 citizens from Oklahoma City. I've been in this business for a very long time. Before that, I was in my own business. The consumer is telling us they want this new app. The people I'm picking up are people from out of town and local. So we're introducing the out-of-town people to Oklahoma City. And I love Oklahoma City because we've done a great job building this city. I drive a 2014 Impala with 21,000 miles. I have a master's degree, which means I can communicate with my customer. I vacuum after every customer because that's the way I want to be treated when I take Uber, when I go drinking. The insurance issue, I am fully covered up to $3 million. I have an extensive net worth, so if I do have an accident, I'm going to lose 40 years of savings, earnings, investments if I'm at fault. So saying the drivers are being solvent is false. I have my brethren over here. Most of these people are college educated, drive new cars, and care about the public. And the good thing about us is our hours are safe. There's no log on cab drivers, and they have to work hour after hour because they have to pay the cab company in a tariff, $280 a week to Yellow Cab. Thunder's different. We are fresh, clean, and professional. And I resigned from a very good company, Yellow Cab, because Uber is what the customer wants. And I get to work on the hours that I want to work. I work early mornings, taking people to the airport. I don't work very many evening hours because of my age. I'm 64 years old. But it's a great concept, and it's here to stay if you allow it. So I hope you consider it. And delaying the vote will basically delay all that work you did for over a year. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Come on up. Have you already filled out one of the blue forms? Okay. Can I have your name and your address? And you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
My name is Kevin Bradshaw. I live in Yukon, but I work for Uber for the past year. But for the past 35 years, I was a state trooper in Oklahoma. And I had worked the road for over 20 years, and then for about 15 years, I had the privilege of working for 5 different governors, driving them and their families around. So I'm qualified to drive, have had all the pursuit driving courses. Uber is a good company, and she expressed a legitimate concern about testing if someone had a Uber driver they suspected was drunk. The only way to make a real arrest, an actual arrest, is for them to get on 911, contact an officer. Captain Thompson would agree with that. The officer would make the stop. He would have probable cause based on just the driver making those statements to the police on 911. The officer would probably observe the erratic driving and he could make the arrest. Something 2 days later after the fact, there's not much legally you could do about that. But Uber is self-regulating because they do have a rating system. If a passenger suspects that their driver is drunk, they can file a complaint with Uber. Uber takes those complaints serious. They will follow up on that. If a driver has continued complaints about erratic driving, incompetence, personal hygiene, all those things people can rate. And if a person consistently gets those low scores, Uber simply deactivates them. They're just not going to have them driving for them. You know, I used to take drunks to jail. Now I take them home. And it accomplishes the same thing. You know, I've picked up over 1,900 people, and I've lost track of how many drunks that I pick up. I don't tell them I was a state trooper because they start freaking out and think I'm going to arrest them again. But anyway, I have done some research on my own, and in Seattle and Philadelphia, they've done some studies where DUI arrests have declined since Uber has come into play. The young people I pick up, they don't even think about driving anymore. They take an Uber. It's going to be there in about 5 minutes, and it's going to take maybe less than that to get picked up and taken home safely. So they don't even get behind the wheel. One gentleman talked about people being flagged over and all that. I drive a 2014 Honda Ridgeline. It does not look like a taxi cab. Nobody's been flagging me over because I'm just cruising around. So I don't even know how they would know to flag somebody over for a off-the-record ride. Uber stresses to us that you can get fired if they even hear about that. But once the trip is started, we are fully covered by Uber insurance. I have a good friend that's an attorney with the Insurance Commission, and she's looked at the policy and she feels comfortable with it. I don't know what to say. It's a good program. I think it's saving lives, and just wanted to tell you that. So
thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir. Have you already filled out one of the forms? Okay, if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
Arthur Bond, 900 Northwest 14th Street, Oklahoma City. I just wanted to reiterate a little bit about, I understand the concerns about drug policy, alcohol policy and whatnot, but it occurs to me as I've sat and listened to this whole procedure that the criteria have already been met to the satisfaction of the application process, if I'm understanding it correctly. And this hearing, I was of the opinion, was just supposed to be a vote of yea or nay on whether the company had complied with those conditions. I understand some of the concerns, but I feel like they could probably, be addressed and tweaked like any law needs to be and should be. But one thing I would point out is that Uber, who I can only speak for, is a kind of a self-policing community. We take great pride in what we do. We hear of any wrongdoing by a driver, that's as far as it goes. And I would encourage you, given that any delay in the process of allowing us to provide the service would be a disservice to the people of Oklahoma City. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to speak on item 5C? Okay, sir, can we have staff input?
Okay, you've got a completed application from Razor LLC to operate a transportation network company, so action on the matter will be at the discretion of the commission.
Okay, can I have a motion concerning item 5C, please?
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner George. Do we have any discussion on this item? Ma'am?
I have a couple questions for Mr. Dries. This is just sort of a housekeeping question. Why is the application in the name Razor instead of Uber?
So Razor is a wholly owned subsidiary of Uber Technologies. Razor is authorized to conduct business here in Oklahoma. It's registered with the Secretary of State. Razor is simply the transportation network company that holds transportation network company licenses across the country and actually has contracts with its driver partners.
So it owns Uber or Uber owns Razor?
Razor is a wholly owned subsidiary of Uber Technologies, correct?
Okay. This is important to me. It's a new day, and the platform you offer, the drivers that are representing, my concerns are not about the platform, the idea, the concept, the need for it. I get all that, and I frankly support it. From day one, for this horseshoe, the appearance has been, from what's presented to us, is just a little bit of an unwillingness to come through the front door on participating in the marketplace. So the final chapter of that to me is, yes, the questions have been answered on the application that the LLC presented. But I have to tell you, I did not expect the answers to be, we don't have a policy. I just feel like it's an incomplete approach to the expectation that the marketplace has. Now that is an untrained, I'm a mom, I volunteer in this position, and I am not downgrading moms, by the way. But I don't pretend to be a counselor or to understand all the nuances of your business. But it just feels a little insincere that the entity wants to participate within the rules of the marketplace. I appreciate the platform, the idea, the stats that your drivers have presented. And I would love these drivers to drive me. Do they represent every single driver? I don't know that. I don't know if you can speak for someone else. I just feel like why did it feel, here's my question. As the application was being completed, did the answer of what is your policy, does the answer of we don't have a policy I understand it's legally correct. That's not what I'm after here. Does that feel like the right spirit in which to answer the question? I guess I'm just kind of wanting to have a personal understanding of, in your shoes, does that really feel like the right thing? Does it, I mean, do you see where I'm coming from? And it doesn't matter, I guess. You've answered legitimately, but I just kind of want to know the intent and what the thought was behind answering whether we don't have a policy.
So if I'm understanding
Yes.
the question, it's about kind of thinking around the policy?
Yeah, as an LLC, when a governing or the governing body or the ordinance says what's your policy about drug testing, who's to be drug tested, et cetera, why does it feel like a good answer to say we don't have a policy, that's our policy?
So first, I would say that safety is our number one priority, and that the usage of our product is dependent on safety. And we do have a policy which is zero tolerance, and as a couple other people have mentioned, we receive feedback after each and every trip. So through the platform, passengers are able to provide that immediately, which we receive. And then I believe, as Commissioner Littlefield mentioned as well, to the extent that a passenger were ever to feel endangered, they would contact the police. But from our perspective, a one-time drug test prior to joining the system is neither predictive nor preventive of drug usage while driving.
Okay. I see that. Let me check my list of questions. If you were to get feedback after a ride is complete or even during the ride, I think the language you used was you have a determination process if there is a suspected breach of that DUI experience. That's an okay term. What does that process look like, just for edification?
So it's actually similar in some ways to what Sergeant Bales had mentioned earlier, which is whenever we receive that feedback, we immediately deactivate the account of the driver, and then we conduct an internal review by interviewing the parties, and as well, if the authorities are involved, obviously cooperating in any way possible. But similar to the way it sounds like the OKC PD would.
Is there some nature of testing of that? I mean, so it's not just the passenger is claiming that the driver is under the influence of something. What creates that third-party litmus test to determine actually is that driver under the influence of something?
So there's not a test that's conducted, but it's a determination from our safety team.
What does that determination look like? I mean, what is that?
Well, so in part, we would speak with a passenger or passengers who reported the feedback, and then fortunately, as a result of our system, we have extensive feedback on each and every driver. So and during that process, in addition to speaking with them, we're able to review basically feedback on that driver from every single trip, and then make that supplements the determination.
Okay. I see. And you do, it's all new. You know, this is new. And because I am a mom, and I feel like I just have to ask those unpopular questions, and because it's about safety and unfamiliarity with what you do. I've never even, I'm not your customer. I don't do breakdown. I'm definitely never inebriated. So it's a newness, but I feel like it's time to air some of that stuff that is creating questions in me, and because I can't be the only one with these kinds of questions. So it's not intended to offend or question. It's just to familiarize and to feel like this vote, we are not just voting on our own opinions, but we're voting on the safety of the citizens that we represent. And hopefully that comes across in my questions. Okay. So your answers are appreciated. I think I have no more.
Thank you.
Okay. Sir? Sir, is this something for him, or do you just have a comment?
I have a question for him, but I have a comment that may help him. And it's a comment to you. Public safety is the primary reason why this whole thing got started, in addition to a level playing field. The public safety, I think, was the crux of the whole thing. And since we all learned about this, since I learned about this, I've had extensive experience with Airbnb, which is a hospitality similar type network, where folks are offering a place for people to stay, and there's a very similar network, a technology network, where people are put in contact with the person that owns that. What I have grasped and learned to understand from the safety perspective of this kind of operation and the one that we approved just a few moments ago, and your concerns, is that the unique thing about this kind of industry is the review process. The driver has a profile, the potential rider has a profile, and from the very first ride, there's a record of how that went, from the very, very first experience. And very, very quickly, as those rides accumulate, not only is there a public safety issue to consider for the drivers, but there's also for the riders. You know, there are people that get in these vehicles that, good Lord, who knows, you know. So the magic kind of thing that's happening in the world today with this kind of technology is not only are there ordinances that are established that attempt to set a basis to encourage public safety, but the machine, the product that these folks are operating, in my opinion, has a second level and maybe even a more comprehensive level that accomplishes public safety. And it's through that review process. It's very unique. My question directly to you, I'm not a business lawyer or a businessman in any way, shape, or form. I understand names of companies. I'm still not real clear. Razor, Uber, the relationship in very lay terms. If you could one more time try to explain that to me. And the other question is, which you might answer by explaining it to me, what would prevent Razor from, there's this Uber, what if there's Reaver? You know, could you do 5 different TNC companies, and this application would be all that's required for Uber to multiply into different companies? Make sense?
I believe so. I'll do my best to answer it, and to the extent the Assistant Municipal Councilor Rawson has any opinions, I would defer to her with regard to the TNC application process. But Razir is simply the wholly owned subsidiary of Uber Technologies. Collectively, that is Uber. Razir is the transportation network company. It applies for the license. It's the rideshare entity which contracts with all the drivers. It simply licenses the software from Uber Technologies, and collectively that's Uber. I believe the terms of use or agreement were mentioned by another gentleman, but that in those terms it is Uber Technologies, including all of its affiliates and subsidiaries, of which Razir is.
Okay. Ma'am?
If Razir is the applicant, is in your filing within the state, is it DBA Uber? Where does it say the legal public-facing name is Uber? On what certificate, what has Razir been given that says legally the public-facing name is Uber?
Not sure if I could specifically answer that.
I believe that maybe that last page in the application, I believe.
Well, I see where the name Uber is mentioned, but I don't.
Where Uber gives Razir the authority to use his technology. Is that what you're looking for, ma'am? in a layman, as she's looking at, in a layman's term, the way I would understand it is, Razier is the company that gets licensed, works the whole transportation network system. Uber's the technology, is the overarching major company, does many different things. We're just going to deal with this one piece of the Uber system, something like that. Counsel, am I close? Am I saying something wrong?
I'm going to defer to the company in order to explain that. It's their company model, so as...
Yeah, I just don't want to make sure I'm saying anything wrong, but...
So actually, if you direct your question to him.
So basically, the company that has this application for Uber Technologies does that around the United States, works with all the companies, is the transportation network vehicle or company, transportation network company, where Uber does 100 other things. This company just worries about transportation.
Correct, and there are other subsidiaries, for example, a different, not Razier, which is a livery entity, not a rideshare, which in this case would apply for the rideshare transportation network company license,
and that
which is registered in the state of Oklahoma.
So there's other companies under Uber, like this Razier, that does different things, and they have these different companies doing all these different things under the whole Uber technology umbrella, per se.
I'm not an attorney.
Right, yeah, I'm not, yeah.
However, yes.
And that's where that last piece of paper in the application says they're allowed to use the Uber technology, I believe. Okay? Okay, any other further questions or comments up here on the horseshoe? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'd like to ask while we have you here, can you just clarify how you ensure that your drivers meet the insurance requirements that we require, that meet the requirements of our municipal code?
So, yeah, I'd be happy to address that. So we require, in compliance with the ordinance, that each driver carries personal auto insurance in compliance with state law. So with ride sharing, we have a very clear view of, when the vehicle is actually used for personal use versus when it's used for commercial use. So there are basically 3 stages of use that a vehicle can be done. One is personal, where the personal auto insurance is in place. The second is when the app is on, so the driver is available to take a trip, but a passenger is not in the vehicle. So in that stage, we provide contingent coverage compliant with the ordinance. And then the third stage, perhaps most importantly, is when from the moment the driver accepts a trip to the moment the passenger is dropped off, we provide a commercial $1 million policy, again, in compliance with the ordinance. And if there is anything from council on that sheet.
So you ask applicants or drivers when they apply to become drivers, they provide that information to you and you keep it on file?
Yes, they are forced to, and then are required to subsequently upon renewal at expiration as that occurs, prior to ever becoming a partner.
All right, so any other questions from up here on the horseshoe? I know there's one out there that wants to come up and talk. Any other questions up here? Okay, all right, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Ma'am, did you want to come up? If I could have your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes, and I see you have a blue slip. Thank you.
My name is Pam Thompson, and my address is 107 Northwest 14th, Oklahoma City. I just have a question. This extensive conversation between Ms. Yokel and this gentleman about the policy that Uber has, about how they handle their drug testing and what they do, all that back and forth, to me, that's a policy. And for them to state in their application that they have no policy, and yet this gentleman's able to come up here and outline to you what it is, and it doesn't exist in your paperwork, to me, that seems like a giant conflict, and I just wanted to point that out. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay. Do we have any other comments from up here on item 5C? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Littlefield, seconded by Commissioner George, to approve item 5C. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, we go to item 5D, the Municipal Counselor's Office, consider extending the deadline from February 13th, 2015 to April 30th, 2015 for the Transportation Network vehicle operators to submit driver applications. Do we have anybody here to speak on item 5D? Okay. Can we have staff input, please?
Okay, with the approval of items 5B and 5C ahead of this, the amount of time left for Transportation Network Company drivers to get licensed is very limited, so this is an extension to at least April 30th in order for drivers to make their Transportation Network drivers applications. So staff would recommend approval.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion concerning item 5D, please?
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Witcher. Do we have a second? Second from Commissioner Jenkins. Do we have any discussion on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5D from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay. 5E, Jacqueline Bass, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73104. Consider request to remove the weekday the weekday 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. parking restriction on the north side of Northeast 16th Street between North Lindsay Avenue and North Phillips Avenue. Anybody here to speak on this item? Yes, ma'am. And you already filled out one of these? I got you right here. Okay, if I can have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Jacqueline Bass, and my address is 705 Northeast 16th Street. The reason why, after the frustrations of sharing a shared driveway, each household where I live, there's 2 households, and there's 1 lane coming and going, and there's 4 to 5 cars that have to come and go at different times and different hours. And so I started asking questions as to why the signs were there, and I found out that they put them there because at OU Medical Center, the students were blocking the the households' driveways, so they had to put up the signs to protect the neighbors. That was so long ago. OU Medical Center has improved parking there tremendously, and so there are 4 or 5 cars coming and going, and so it causes a lot of frustration, you know, because right now we have rental property in the back that we can't rent out because when it was rented out, just 1 more car caused so many problems and so many issues. And when we have family and friends that come over, they have nowhere to park, and they can't park in the driveway. And after talking to 95% of the neighbors after getting the petition, they shared the same frustration that I did, but they didn't feel that there was anything that they could do about it. I don't really know if I'm doing my best to see if we could make it better. And so, you know, for everyone that lives there, I mean, a lot of the neighbors have gotten thousands of dollars worth of tickets because sometimes they don't know what to do, and so they end up parking. Sometimes we've had to park around the corner and walk, you know, during the hours, or have our neighbors, have friends or family to park around the corner. And so I really don't understand why the signs have to stay. You know, I don't know why they have to stay if the parking has improved. And so that's one of the reasons, you know, why I, you know, talk to the neighbors and try to, you know, get a petition to see if something can be done about it to improve, you know, our living situation, you know, because of the parking. So that's why I'm here, to see if there's a possibility to have the no parking signs removed.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anybody else here to speak on item? Yes, sir. Have you already filled out one of the blue forms? Okay, if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
My name is James Tyler, 701 Northeast 16th. And I have just a few reasons that the petition should be denied. And one, the current parking restrictions are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. These restrictions are not unreasonable. This is a compromise, and a good one at that. The restrictions were implemented to keep the Health and Science Center employees, patients, and students from parking on the street. That was in 1977, and as we know, the OU Medical Center has not gotten smaller and won't for a long while. My wife works at OU in Norman, and she has to pay for parking herself. And so I don't think there's any free parking on the OU Medical Center campus. Thirdly, and this is the one that upsets me the most, on page 1 of your agenda, it says 100% of the residents on the north side of Northeast 16th Street in the petition in favor of the request, and that's just not true. I live on the northeast side, on the north side, and we denied it. We voted disapprove. On page 11, there's a star on our house saying we approve, and there is not, we don't approve. So I don't know where, and there's no other person that lives on our property, and so I don't know how the petition was tallied, and it's unclear. I've looked at it several times, and I couldn't come up with the numbers of how it works. Ms. Bass believes that these parking restrictions don't affect us because we don't park. Our driveway is not on 16th Street. It's on Lindsay, just around the corner, but it does affect us immensely. We don't care for people parking in front of our house if we can't help it. We don't want utilities to be encumbered, fire, trash pickup, those kind of things. We just don't, the road is already narrow, and it's just, it affects us. So, excuse me. And lastly, sorry, I just don't think there's a lot of support for it. A lot of people did approve for it, but the first time we voted on it, I was the only one to be here. The second time at the City Council, Ms. Bass and I were the only ones. 1 for, 1 against, and again, 1 for, 1 against. And this petition is very important to me. I mean, I don't want to come across as unneighborly, but I just don't think it's right for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments on item 5E? Ma'am, did you want to come back up? You have a little bit of time left. So.
I'm not saying that it doesn't affect him because I don't live in his shoes. I'm saying that when I said 95% of the neighbors, it was only one neighbor, which is him on the side of me. He never responded, but his wife did sign, but she didn't check anything. She just signed, but she didn't check anything because they said that I had to at least let them, have a signature, even if they didn't want to sign. Another neighbor was upset because she said that if there was parking, then if a emergency vehicle tried to come through, they couldn't get through. But that's not true because right on there's some neighborhoods whose the same, it's not, the size of coming and going is the same, and they have parking on both sides. I'm not trying to make anything, I'm only talking from my point of view, what our frustration, what I'm dealing with, and the neighbors that I talk to. And most of the neighbors, they don't get, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. So they don't really know what to do. They just accept the circumstances, and they don't, sometimes people just accept things the way they are and they learn to deal with it. For me, this is a big step for me to even walk up and down the street and talk to neighbors to try to make my living situation better. And after talking to them, they're dealing with the same frustration, but they're just not doing anything about it. So it's not about who's right. I'm not trying to say that, that I'm right and he's wrong. I'm just saying that what my frustrations are, and I would like to make it the living situation better for the neighbors. And most of them signed it. It was only maybe 2 or 3 that didn't sign. Some didn't want to get involved, but if you look at it, all of them signed that they were in agreement of having the parking, no parking signs removed.
All right, thank you very much. Any other, you'd like to come back? You have a couple seconds left on your time too, sir.
We did vote no. Page 10, 701 Northeast is checked as no. We did vote no, and I'm not saying that she's putting words in my mouth, but it affects us that this the thing that bothers me the most is we check no, and our house and our residents on the petition says that we approve. It's not correct. It's not correct, and it's not. If somebody tallied it wrong, it doesn't make any sense, and it's upsetting to me that we did vote, and our vote was not counted. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, anybody else for item 5E?
It was just, she didn't check any, his wife was the one that signed, but she didn't check anything. I said, they just need to know that I communicated with you. But she didn't check anything. I don't know if she checked no or whatever, but I do remember either her getting a signature or something like that.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, staff input, please.
All right, as you can see, this was referred back from the City Council after the Commission's hearing on it previously. In this particular matter, I just want to make a public clarification regarding our petition process. That's part of the Traffic Commission standard operating policies and procedures. And what it does is it is a form of demonstration of general neighborhood consensus with a request. It is not an it doesn't necessarily figure into whether or not something should or should not be approved. We require a canvass of the area. We make sure we get full coverage of the affected area, and the policy requires that you have at least 2/3 of the residents signing in favor of it. Because this way, when it comes to the commission, they know that notice has been provided to the neighborhood. It's not, it's been made clear and publicly available. And it also indicates by having a 2/3 majority that you've got more than just a simple majority favoring the requested or the proposal before them. So as you can see that Ms. Bass has represented this matter. It's come back from the City Council for your consideration again, and action on this item is going to be at the discretion of the Commission.
So it's my understanding, just for the staff comments, to make it clear, she filed the appeal to City Council within the allotted amount of time, went to City Council. City Council then pushed it back, asked us to relook at it one more time.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think the primary reason being is because at the time that she filed the appeal, she wasn't here at the original Traffic Commission hearing, and I believe is more or less the opportunity in order for her to come out and be able to address you so that when you take action on this matter, you'll have had basically as much neighborhood input as you can possibly get.
Right, and just for everybody, usually on these kind of things, to rehear another item is usually after 6 months, but the City Council has asked us to look at it again. So, that's our normal policy is 6 months, but once the City Council asks, of course, we'll go ahead and do what the City Council wishes. So, that's to just clarify some of the staff input. Okay, staff input. Do we have a motion concerning item 5E?
I move that the request be approved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins to approve item 5E. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a second from Commissioner Witcher. Do we have any discussion on this item?
I have a question for staff. Do we know what let's see, that's 16th, so 15th and 14th Street, do we know if those have no parking restrictions?
We would have to check on that. We didn't review the parking restrictions on the adjoining streets at the time we presented this.
What I'm trying to get at is, has the parking situation really changed? Is it likely that if we remove the no parking restrictions, will folks from other users tend to park there? And it seems like we would be able to determine that if we found that, say, for example, on 15th Street, there's not any parking restrictions, and there's parking up and down the street during the 8 to 5. That's what I'm trying to get at.
It's kind of difficult to determine. If this matter goes to the City Council, and if the Council approves the ordinance changing the parking restrictions, time will tell. Because at this point in time, there's a bit, since this was originally put in the 70s, the Health Sciences Center has grown, but they've also provided parking garages and other such things for their students and for their faculty and the patients in the area. So it's hard to say. I believe that Mike Anderson had looked at some of the adjoining areas. I can't say for a fact what restrictions are on some of the other streets between 16th Street and the boundary areas where the Health Sciences Center exists. But I would, at this point in time, would have a tendency to think that if there are restrictions on other streets, you'd have to be very hard-pressed to go, seeking out areas several blocks away from the Health Sciences Center campus just to look for parking when there's probably ample parking available on the campus. But
Mr. Tyler's point is well taken, that to my knowledge, there's not free parking on the campus and in the parking structures that are part of the campus, and so it may be attractive to a lot of folks to take advantage of free parking on the street.
Right, and it's very possible, and if this becomes a neighborhood issue again, they can bring it back to the commission again for a rehearing.
In 6 months.
It's always subject to change.
Well,
ma'am, go ahead.
Well, my concern is that a person can't come and visit and park on the street. And if your driveway is already taken, it seems to be a major misuse of no parking. I just don't see it as an individual problem. I see it as a neighborhood problem. And, I'm very aware of that area, and I know that the Health Sciences Center has grown, but I also know that when, in 1977, it was a different ballgame, that they did not have access to all of the parking facilities around. So I feel strongly that people in the neighborhood should be able to have visitors who can park between 8 and 5 during a weekday.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Did you have something?
I was just going to say, I drove over there this morning, and the restriction is on 15th Street, and there were 2 cars illegally parked when I was there. But there are only 2 cars on the street, so.
Okay. Sir?
So, a quick comment to think about. Typically, no parking in time zones in residential areas makes sense if there's a really grave situation where, like, there's a shopping center that was just built right next to it, and there's vehicular ingress and egress between the neighborhood and the shopping center. The goal is to discourage patrons from that shopping center from parking in the neighborhood. That's one comment. And like Commissioner Emmons said, back in 1977, it may have been a different story with the hospital, and it's a different story today. Another thing to consider, to think about, and this commission works on this all the time, in residential neighborhoods there are speeding issues often brought before us. And one of the things that helps calm that is when cars are allowed to park on the street. It's kind of it's a side effect of, it's a traffic calming device, in my opinion. So if this were to be approved today, you may want to consider that there's a positive outcome to it, in that it would slow people down. From the concern about emergency vehicles' ability to access that street, if an emergency vehicle needs to get down any street, it doesn't matter what's parked where, they're going to do it.
And the parking restriction would still be on the south side of the street, so I don't think the emergency vehicle access is an issue.
Ma'am?
The thing that bothers me, I just seem to be a grumpy person today, but when there's one issue with the accuracy of a petition, and then there's multiple or dual signatures representing one residence, petitions mean something to me. I have a history here of voting unpopularly whenever the residents want something. I think the residents live there and they know. And so I tend to want to vote in the direction of the petition, but I would like to think that the petition is accurate. I don't mean this in any offense to you, Mrs. Bass. I just feel like if we identified an error because Mr. Tyler is misrepresented on here, and then there are multiple or dual signatures representing a residence, I tend to have concern about the petition.
I have
we have a copy of the petition and an evaluation of the petition, and that there are dual signatures representing one residence. When those dual signatures are weighing in on the percentages that we're talking about, they're not? Okay. I just feel like when a little glimpse of question is raised on the accuracy of a petition, I think it paralyzes my ability to make a great filling decision on what the people are really asking for in that neighborhood, because I'm all about listening to what the neighborhood wants. And I don't mean to sound like I mean no disrespect in what I'm saying is my point. I feel like I don't know how to evaluate the petition. So I don't have a question, but it's my 3 cents on that.
Sir? When an applicant comes before you to try to accomplish something like this, are they not provided with the 300-foot rule, or it's both sides, it's different, isn't it? With the no parking anytime, it's both sides of the street?
Right, it's both sides of the street, because the reason being for something like that is because a parking restriction on one side of the street is going to affect residents on both sides.
Given. So are they not provided with the names of the property owners that are required to be approached?
No.
They're not?
No, we just provide them with guidance.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let me check up here first. Anybody else up here have any questions or comments? Okay. And I believe you were the last one, so we'll let Ms. Bass. Did you want to say something else, ma'am? Or would you like to wait a little bit? Well, okay, yeah, ma'am, you need to come to the microphone if you do want to speak, please. No, go ahead, sir. All right.
Like I said, the thing that upsets me most is the petition. It's not Ms. Bass's fault. She got there's no outline that I can go to that I'm not aware of that tells me how they were counted.
We refer to the staff.
In these matters, we review the addresses. I mean, as far as like the validity of the signatures and the addresses on a petition, it's really on an honor system, because we do not go through and verify signatures. We don't verify residency. We look for addresses which give us enough information to know that the petition was circulated adequately throughout the area that's required.
Okay.
So I mean, so far as we can tell, everything appears to be in order. If you look at the petition, most of the signatures are unintelligible.
Yes,
I couldn't tell you, and we are not handwriting analysts.
No,
so,
not either.
We take it in good faith that the applicant has done their component of public notification.
Right. The thing is if you do go to the county's assessor office, some of these addresses aren't on there, and I don't know if somebody came up to a house and said, would you be in favor of they could put down an address and a signature. I'm not sure how they live there. And the other thing is, a lot of these are tenants, leased tenants. The guy across the street from me in 700 Northeast 16th doesn't live there anymore. The house is vacant. The neighborhood changes, has a turnover that's on the high side. Granted, I understand. I don't know how you can take a petition now and say that it's valid today, or petition then and say it's valid today. And I just don't understand how these were, because there's not only 2 that disagreed, there was 4 that disagreed in the jargon that's in this agenda. They either said disagreed, or they couldn't, was vacant, or you couldn't get a signature. That's 4 people on that street.
Thank you very much. Hold on one second. Hold on one second, sir.
Mr. Tyler. Mr. Tyler.
One moment. We have a question. No, that's okay.
I was reading your letter, just real quick. Do you ever, besides the problems with the petition, do you have any problem with us removing the no parking on the north side?
I do. I think that it's too narrow of a street. I find that our neighborhood is starting to become, there's a couple houses on my street that have been renovated. I think it's bad for our resale, our home, I can't remember what the word I'm looking for, property value that there's a lot of cars on the street during daytime business hours. This is only during daytime business hours, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. Every other time on the weekend, you can park there. I mean, I have a small garage, a two-car garage, and a third small spot. I manage my property so that I don't have cars on there. And I've been living there for 2 years, and I still haven't seen a ticket being written out to anybody. And I have visitors, and I have people that work on the house, just like everybody else. I don't have a problem with it. I just believe that as a homeowner, they should just stay the same so that we can build on the neighborhood. I mean, it's going up. We just want it so there's not a lot of cars, so it has an appearance of, a better appearance, I should say.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Mann?
I had sent the petition in, and then Mr. Stewart sent it back and said that there were addresses missing. So what I had to do is let him know which addresses it was vacant or the property was no longer there. And so I had to sit down with him and explain, to him. And I don't believe that the reason why I'm affected more than just a property owner that just has their own driveway is because most of my neighbors have a shared driveway, so there's one lane coming and going. So there's 4 to 5 cars that have to come and go at different times, different hours, so it presents a problem. We can't rent out the back property because when it was someone living there, it caused so much tension between the neighbors because they'd come and wait, you have to move your car. And so I did my best. It was so hard getting in touch with everyone. I almost got frustrated that I stopped. And then I said, when I started dealing with the pressures and the frustration again, I said, I've got to do something about this no matter how hard it is. So I did my best to find out, to write what was vacant, what wasn't vacant, to communicate with people, to find out, if they were dealing with the same thing. And most of them are dealing. I only talked to 2 neighbors that weren't in agreement. I didn't really talk to him, but I could tell that he wasn't in agreement. And then I don't know how that happened, that his wife or whatever, how it got approved, because I know that some of them, there was a neighbor across the street that signed, and I said, well, what is your address? So I did my best, to get them. And I didn't cheat or check off anything that wasn't there.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other discussion up here? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Witcher, to approve item 5E. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. 5F, Ashley Kenazar, Yukon, Oklahoma. Consider a request for the establishment of all-way stop control at the intersection of Spindlin Ridge Drive and Northwest 42nd Street. Do you have anybody here to speak on item 5F? Yes, sir. If I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes, and I have your sheet here.
Okay. Eric Canancer, 4213 Spindle Ridge Drive. Basically, all we're wanting to do is just kind of slow the traffic down. We live off Highway 66 there in Yukon, and it's 55 miles an hour through there. So when people come in the drive, I mean, it's pretty fast. They just don't slow down. There's 13 kids just on our block, just trying to get traffic slowed down a little bit. That's it. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else to speak on item 5F? Staff input, please.
All right, you've got our complete comments before you. One thing I want to reiterate is in recent Traffic Commission reports, we've gone through and we now include a comprehensive speed study. In residential areas, sometimes it's hard to get enough vehicles to provide a decent representative sample. Ordinarily, a speed study consists of observation for a 1-hour period or up until the time you get 100 vehicles in your sample. We'd run a study that was out there at this particular intersection. You'll note that on the first page of your report that we determined the 85th percentile speed of traffic entering this intersection from the north approach was 18 miles an hour, which means that of 85% of all the vehicles entering the intersection, 85 were traveling 18 miles an hour or slower. There were some that were going above that, Our full speed study is included at the tail end of your report, and you can see that the highest observation we had in this particular application was 26, and we have one vehicle doing that speed. So we can appreciate the applicant's interest in improving safety, but at this point in time, based on our evaluation of the intersection with respect to the warrants that we use for all-way stop control, and based on our speed analysis and collision analysis, at this point in time, we don't have cause to support the application as presented.
Okay, can I have a motion concerning 5F, please?
I will move to disapprove.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Witcher to disapprove item 5F.
Second.
And seconded by Commissioner Hale. Any discussion on this item?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Kennetzar. Mr. Kennetzar, could you come back up and so the engineering data indicates that drivers are recognizing the kind of odd condition of coming in on this curb and are slowing down. Where is your house from the corner?
Okay.
Are you about
From 39th, I'm actually on Spindle Ridge Drive.
So you're down south?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The 85% was actually going north, which is where the yield sign is, I believe. And that's right in front of our house there.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say that I when I opened up the agenda and I looked at this, kind of my first reaction seeing the way that the drive comes into the neighborhood is, my first reaction is, wow, I see the problem. That's kind of a dangerous design because you got this kind of blind corner as folks are coming in. My next thought was, this would probably work out good if it were a gated neighborhood and there was a gate there. So when I drove out to look at it, I was coming from the west and I inadvertently went to the neighborhood that's just to your west.
Mm-hmm.
It's a gated neighborhood.
Yes.
It works great. So just get a gate, you got your problem solved. Thanks. Staff would, so an always stop control, so there'd be a stop sign that stops traffic that's coming from the north off of 39th Expressway, correct? So do we have traffic volumes or anything, are we going to cause accidents by having a stop sign there? You see what I'm saying? We have somebody stopped at a stop sign, somebody else coming off of 39.
Well, traffic controls are very useful in regulating the flow of traffic, assigning the right-of-way and that sort of thing. But, the reality is it's always up to a driver to pay full attention to what they're doing. I mean, so to say that there are times when the use of traffic control can probably lead to collisions because it might be placed in an unexpected location. This is in a residential environment. However, it is in a location where you'd be coming around a curve after you've exited the highway. But like I said, the speed data that we got by collecting from people using that north approach, which are the ones pretty much either outbound towards the Northwest 39th Expressway or inbound, indicated that we don't have an 85th percentile speed that's even at the posted speed limit this time.
Okay. And if right now there's already a driveway that's kind of within the box of the intersection. And is that going to be any worse problem? Or I remember in the report or in the letter it was noted that those folks, I gather, have trouble sometimes getting out of their driveway. Are we going to make that worse by doing always stop control?
It could present them with an unusual condition because they'd be backing into basically an always stop control driveway, and driveways never have the opportunity to have right of way. I mean, when you enter from a private road or from a private piece of property, you kind of like the vehicles on the main public road will always have the right of way. So it could lead to an unusual situation, but that would be very rare because ordinarily, I mean, the standard rate for a trip generation for a home is 10 trips per day, and a trip is a one-way trip either out or in. So when you look at 10 trips a day, you're looking at 5 round trips per day. So, a single home doesn't generate that much traffic, so the opportunity for vehicle conflicts are probably pretty low. However, in the event that occurs, it would present the resident in that home with kind of an unusual situation, and they may not be clear with exactly what to do at times.
But their trips in and out of their driveway would probably likely coincide with the higher traffic of in the morning and in the evening.
Good chance for that, yes.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Stuart, can we look at over the aerial view? Can you point out where was the speed study done? I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. When it says from the northern approach, is that short stretch coming into the neighborhood?
Yes, and one of the things that Mr. Canaster put in their request is they perceive that there is, a speed issue for people that had left the highway. I mean, Northwest 39th Expressway in that area is posted 55.
Yeah.
And so it's not uncommon to see people that kind of have more of a highway mentality. However, so what we looked at primarily was the speeds on traffic inbound and outbound on Spindle Ridge coming, between the intersection where they're wanting to stop control and the highway.
Yeah, okay.
Right. We took the worst case scenario.
Okay, then I have a couple questions for the applicant, please.
Sir, if you could, please. Thank you.
The speed issues you're observing, is there any time-specific problem? Because the speed study was done, between 2 and 4, 2:30, 4 o'clock, something like that?
I don't think
I just want to make sure that the data we're looking at is lining up with the concerns you're expressing.
Sure. I think what I'm expressing is it's not necessarily the speed that they're coming in or coming out. It's that they just blatantly ignore the stop signs or the yield signs, and with the children playing, it is nerve-wracking. We've got signs, hey, slow down, kids are playing. For whatever reason, all the neighborhood kids kind of congregate, right there in that area. You've got big front yards. Just trying to get the traffic to be more aware. It's a bigger issue than just a yield sign or going 18, in or out. So
Is the only sign, and if I'm looking at it correctly, it looks like there's one yield sign, and it's that northern approach on the lower side of Spindle, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you're buying those neon children with flags, I love those things.
Yes, ma'am.
Sad to see that it's not helping you out there. Is there a blinking yield, children playing, those kinds of things? Because if they're going to blow through this intersection, they may blow through the stop signs. I mean, it looks like there's a lot. The part of this intersection that kind of I find confusing is when you're coming up. I'm missing my aerial view here again. There we go. So on that 42nd Street, when you're heading towards the exit, I mean, that's a weird little jog in the road to hop over to the exit of it. Just feels like there's a lot to pay attention to, and they may not be paying attention to anything except getting out of the neighborhood, especially little ones.
Yes, ma'am.
So here I go again. I don't like saying the applicant asked for this. The answer is no. That doesn't feel satisfactory to me. Maybe stop signs aren't the right thing, so my question is, what is the right thing? Because I absolutely believe you've got an issue. Listening, looking, and when I saw that curved road, I'm like, oh, holy moly, this is a freeway coming through. And then when I saw the 85th percentile, I thought, well, that's weird. Of course, when you're close to the road, speed feels real different when you're close to that car. And if it was my 5-year-old close to that car, I'd think they're doing 80 when they're doing 20. So there's perspective involved here, too. None of that negates the reality of your concern and the possible problems you have here. So, I mean,
thinking over this, I mean, I don't know that we have a solution. I mean, it's probably something that's more appropriate to our comments at the end of the meeting, but I think the real issue is bad design of the entry to this neighborhood. It may be that the all-way stop control is the only thing it's not the right answer. It may not really fix the problem, but it may be the only thing that there is out there.
Sir?
I'm probably going to shock all of you. The traffic counts, the 85th percentile is 18 miles per hour? Is that correct?
That's correct.
When I look at this, there are elements of this that I dream of for neighborhoods. That curve and the Cashanes in the center of it. You know, I would have fully have expected you to come present that there people are speeding on Northwest 42nd all the way down to Scissor Trail, but looking at that area up there, that's actually a conditioned design that truly does slow traffic down, and you're blessed to have that. I'm sorry, that's all I have to say.
I think that the approaches are confusing, and understanding the yield sign is helpful, but I think understanding who has right-of-way is confusing, and especially coming off that curve and then instantly turning south onto Spindle Ridge, and no stop control from the other way. To me, it's problematic.
Could street marking help it? Would that be a possibility?
Some lining, you mean?
Yeah, lining. Where it takes away the ambiguity. I mean, almost, I'm going to stick by my comment until you get to that point, but when you get to that point, it's almost a traffic circle.
Well, as far as drivers' ability to negotiate that particular intersection, I mean, there's the collision history that we found in the database that ODOT maintains, which is populated using Department of Public Safety records. There have been no collisions at this intersection. I mean, and the collision that they record, it's not necessarily, a collision between automobiles. It can be a collision with a fixed object that gets reported, or with an animal, or cyclist, pedestrian, anything like that. So at this point in time, there's just no record of collisions. We've got an 85th percentile that's, when we measured it, was below the posted 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's just, like I said, at this point in time, we as staff just don't have cause to recommend it because it doesn't meet any of the criteria, that longstanding criteria for use of all-way stop control at an intersection such as this.
So, sir, I got one question.
Sure.
Is there a flow of traffic from outside the neighborhood going through your neighborhood, or is this all just neighborhood people? Is it a closed neighborhood per se?
It's pretty much closed neighborhood. It's a big neighborhood, but if you're going to enter in right there at that intersection, I mean, you live in the neighborhood.
And then one of the things we've always talked about was neighborhood newsletters, that kind of thing, to say, hey, you're in our neighborhood, please watch out when you come in. Those kind of things we've offered up in the past. Okay, any other comments over here, ma'am?
Okay, since I'm the oldest one in the
Yes,
group,
ma'am.
I'm going to throw out my suggestion. Kids seem to go to the front yard to play when they have large backyards. And I'm wondering if maybe parents can begin to help their kids use the backyard, because there is a danger in the front yard. So that's the end of my second 2 cents.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Thank you, sir. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Hale, to disapprove item 5F. Can I have your votes, please? All right, item is disapproved. Okay. 5G, Scott C. Barr, Hoots Zoa, Inc., Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73116, and Traffic Management Division to consider requests for those 6 items that are listed there: changing of a speed limit, establishing 45-degree parking, reserve parking, establish reserve parking spaces, establish some more reserve parking spaces, and establish some more reserve parking spaces. Do we have anybody here to speak on item 5G? Okay. Can we have staff report, please?
Staff comments are before you, although we might defer to Commissioner Littlefield at this particular time, since he is the ward representative covering this particular location.
With the hopeful blessings of Eric Winter, Public Works Director, and Councilman Shadid, myself, and Planning Commissioner Ward 2, Janice Powers, we'd like to continue this until the next meeting for only the opportunity for this group of people to sit down and get a more clear understanding of the scope of the project and how this element interacts with it. It's just a timing issue, and I'd very much appreciate it if we could continue this.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Littlefield to postpone this to the next meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Witcher. Any discussion on it? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Littlefield, seconded by Commissioner Witcher, to postpone item 5G till next meeting. Have your votes? Okay, item is approved. We go on over to 5H. Matt Floyd, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73109. Consider a request for the establishment of all-way stop control at the intersection of South Chartel Avenue and Southwest 5th Street. Anybody here to speak on item 5H, sir? We already have one of these for you. If I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Matt Floyd, 609 South Chartel. The reason why we're here asking about that is since I-40 shifted down to the south, we've seen kind of an increase in traffic going downtown. I think the study that you had was 85th percentile, just like the last gentleman. I think that was at 9 a.m. and 10? Is that when the study was conducted?
Yes, it was done between 9 and 10 a.m.
Okay. And I think a lot of the traffic that we've seen more of an issue with is in the evening, especially with the Thunder game. That's kind of become a detour to get downtown because you can go all the way over to E.K. Gaylord and then go that back route to the movie theaters and also the MAPS 3. There's going to be, I think, a change with the detour to go to Shields when Shields closes and using Southwest 5th as a detour. And so kind of just really preparing ahead. That neighborhood in the past been a lot of dilapidated houses, and now those houses we've moved into, and there's kids down there, and a little bit more residents than there was in the past. And so I think as the more people are moving down that direction. And then also we've seen 4 accidents last year, and that we've seen. And I know some accidents don't go even recorded, fender benders and stuff like that. And then also, since it's a one-way, I see a lot of cars accidentally driving the wrong direction because there's two-way streets down there, and then occasionally there's one-way, so it gets kind of confusing. And I used to do that too on accident. You'd turn down a road and then get stuck for a second. And so just to slow traffic and keep it a little bit safer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to talk on item 5H? You have staff input, please.
Okay, you've got the complete report before you. As you noted, the speed limit we've got posted on Southwest 5th Street is 30 miles an hour. We had an 85th percentile speed measured of 32, and we had a reasonable sample size for that particular run. The intersection currently does not meet the warrants for all-way stop control at this point in time. Just for your information, just about every street south of Reno, bounded by Western and Shields, has been approved through this commission for conversion to two-way traffic. So at this point in time, it could go to two-way, but it has not yet. And a lot of those directional changes will probably take place closer to the time that some of the streets to your east close when the downtown park starts construction. So I just wanted to let you, make you aware of that particular case. That's the reason why when this item was written, it was written for all-way stop control as opposed to something like three-way, because with 5th Street being authorized to be converted to a two-way street, if this matter was approved and subsequently 5th Street was converted to a two-way street, the appropriate action to make it all-way stop control would be in place. But just at this point in time, based on our review of warrants for use of all-way stop control, we just don't have cause to recommend it.
Okay. We have a motion concerning 5H.
Motion to deny.
Okay, we have a motion to deny item 5H from Commissioner Hale. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second from Commissioner George. Do we have any discussion? Ma'am?
I know the vote is on stop, yes or no. If stops aren't put in, what would be an alternative that seems to the applicant?
Yeah, so if you come on up.
I mean,
I don't know. A stoplight, a blinking light, there's not a yield sign there, so, I mean, maybe that's an ease into it. But there's not consistent traffic there. There's quite a bit of traffic, but it's not like there's going to be, like, traffic slowing stuff down, which that's kind of part of the concern, because occasionally there is, somebody that goes pretty fast down there, and there's houses on that corner right there. So, you get that one guy that goes 55 or whatever. But a lot of times it's not, the issue isn't too much the speed as opposed to people accidentally going the wrong direction or pulling out of the driveways. So if you're pulling out of a driveway and it's, somebody's going 35, that's still pretty quick. And then also that's the first right turn now off of I-40, and I think people are becoming more familiar as more things happen downtown, especially the river stuff going on. That's just easy, quick access to skip Sheridan and skip all that construction downtown now. So I think as more stuff is developing, more detours, it's just going to be adding more traffic. So my question to you guys would be, let's say that all that stuff that you're talking about is happening, how long does it take to get something down there? So would we be thinking ahead, or would we be kind of slapped in the face by it, and then it takes 4 months to get a stop sign in when that construction just happened in that moment? So it's just more preparing ahead than thinking about necessarily just for the current moment.
Agreed, ma'am.
I guess I'm just trying to understand the priority of the issues. I mean, what can be solved in the priority of issues? I'm still not sure I completely understand what the priority of issues are.
Meaning what's wrong? What needs to be fixed? Or?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I'd say slowing traffic, decreasing accidents, there's more children running around. To me, that would be something that we've seen. We've seen accidents down there. We've seen people driving the wrong direction, and the confusion currently between, what's two-way and what's one-way. And there's signage there, as far as it is a one-way street, but you still see the problem of, somebody pulls out and drives the wrong direction, and somebody's going 35, 40 the other direction. And then there's not a lot of turnoffs to kind of get out of the way, So especially when it is a two-lane road, you can't just cut over into one lane and avoid it. But, yeah.
So the motion on the table is to deny it. Correct. And Commissioner Littlefield mentioned an interesting option. I mean, what can be done if stops are not the right thing? We haven't voted yet, but if they aren't the right thing, is there something that can be done just from the staff office that doesn't require a vote that might help remedy a situation there? Is it painting on the road that reminds people you're going the wrong way? Or, I mean, what can be done?
Well,
that's what I'm saying.
And that's one of the things that we look at when we pull through the collision records. We found that there was one collision recorded in 2013, and there's one so far. There was one in 2014. If you look on page 2 of the report, we provide a little summary information. The one collision in 2014 was involved an intoxicated driver who struck 2 parked vehicles. Painting a road is not going to address something like that. And the other collision occurred between, I guess, an improper left turn made from Southwest 5th onto Chartel, So I don't believe that pavement marking necessarily is the issue. You will notice that the traffic volume on Southwest 5th Street runs above 1,700 vehicles per day. And Southwest 5th Street also functions in this area as a collector road. Because, you do have it's in the downtown transitional district, so you do have businesses and some industrial uses to the west of this location, and it becomes a little bit more residential as you head towards the east. But, this area is going to change in the future. I mean, like I said, at some point in time, some of these streets are going to be cut off when the downtown park is constructed. That's going to change traffic volumes. Whether they increase or decrease, it's kind of hard to say. It depends on how access, what are going to be the better points of access to go down to the park, or if the park is going to generate as much traffic as it does, because this is like a weekday count, and it may be that in the future the park might generate more traffic on a weekend than it would weekday. It's hard to say because the area is changing. Yes, sir.
I have a general question about the spot speed studies. They obviously are done, I would assume, when you have time to do them. And so, therefore, if there is a speed issue at a certain time of the day, just say the applicant talked about a specific number of hours during a day where they observed higher rates of speed, would you then try to do the speed study during those hours, or is it random, or how do we?
If an applicant indicates that there's like a certain particular problem time during the day when they've got an issue, we can typically arrange staff time to conduct a study then. I mean, if you would be interested in seeing a speed study, okay, maybe a better question is there a particular time of day that it seems worse than others?
It really depends on events. So it's not necessarily a particular time. So when's a Thunder game, when people head to that, they get there early. So it's, instead of, conducting at a time, is there the art festival downtown? Is there, a Thunder game? Is like stuff like that is when we see an increase in traffic. So it's hard to disclose, it's not necessarily people getting off work because they can't drive that direction from Bricktown going to work. Usually people are pretty accountable, as they're headed to work, and it doesn't seem like we have too much of an issue in the morning and kids aren't out playing. But, occasionally there's that 5 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night when things are happening downtown where there's not people coming necessarily to work but going to an event or dinner or whatever it is. And, I don't think we've seen too much of a problem with like crazy drivers because they're going in that street, they're going into Bricktown, not away, so because it's one way. So it just depends on what's happening, honestly. It's hard to clarify a specific time.
Just a comment. I'm so pleased that folks are moving into that area and reclaiming that neighborhood. So,
well, thank
thanks. You. Sir, just a kind of a question. Classen Boulevard has stop control on a major thoroughfare. Is that because of the one-way status of Fifth? And
at this point in time, Classen Boulevard pretty much ends just south of this intersection. By the time you get to actually Fifth Street, Classen Boulevard's pretty much run its course.
Okay.
So most people think of Classen as being a continuous boulevard roadway that functions as an arterial, but at this point in the city, this is where it pretty much cut off.
For the condition that we have here, having the stop control to
that would not be unusual.
Makes sense. Okay.
Sir?
Ditto on moving down there.
Nice.
Wonderful. What I'm observing here is a mixed-use environment, and I also am observing opportunity. This is going to evolve, as you said. It's a possibility that Southwest 5th Street could be converted back to two-way traffic, more likely than not.
Right. It's been voted on. This commission's approved its conversion back to two-way.
Yeah, that alone will help calm traffic.
Yeah. What we were looking at is the in-between. So in between those times, as all the construction's happening, and it is a detour route towards Shields, is that as that becomes a detour and there's actually signage now pointing people to Southwest 5th, it's just to be prepared for that, the increasing in traffic down there. So right now, I think you said there's, was it
1,700 vehicles.
1,700 vehicles, and then what would that look like now with orange signs pointing, directing people towards that street? So 1,700 vehicles, now that would turn into Sheridan. In my mind, as far as traffic flow, if those areas are cut off, if that's a main, tunnel to get to downtown. So it's what could we do between those times before it turns into a two-way, so that as more traffic's increasing, it stays safe for people living in the neighborhood, pulling out of their driveways, so it's not 5 cars coming by through the day. It's also like, there's a house, if you see on your map, there's a house right on the corner there that, their cars literally park in their driveway and kind of hang out in the back there. And so as they're pulling out, if there's that kind of traffic, are they ever going to have a breather to get out, like during rush hour or something like that? So it's just more to be prepared for things that, until those things happen during the construction time. So is there a temporary stop sign that you can do during that time, or some kind of a temporary light or something during that transition?
Well, in my opinion, given this is mixed use, there's plenty of residential down there, and we don't have residential neighborhoods typically where we have 30-mile-an-hour speed limits. And because there's an obvious evolution that's going to take place, I don't want to say sooner rather than later, it may be the opposite, the way the process works. What harm would there be if there were a stop sign placed there and it had to be come back for housekeeping purposes or whatever in a year or two, or whenever this changes down here to take it out? I think, my opinion is that it would make an impact on a 30-mile-an-hour street that's mixed use.
Okay.
Okay, I was about to say, because an alternative, if speed is kind of a concern, the manual and uniform traffic control devices says, cautions against the use of stop control for speed control. Now, as you noted, 5th Street's currently posted at 30 miles an hour. When we did our study, the high speed that we did observe was 37. And it's not to say that, if you look at Chartel, which is, the intersecting street, it's posted at 25. And like I said, most of the area, as you move further to the east on 5th Street, it becomes more residential in nature. And maybe it's that, the commission may want, or the applicant may want to bring back an item to have the speed limit lowered on 5th Street. Because like I said, when it goes to two-way traffic, at some point in time, it's probably, especially approaching Park, there'll probably come a time when using a lower speed limit will be more appropriate for the area. But like I said, in the past, this is kind of an area that's in transition, so much is going to change. But when the park gets constructed, it will no longer be a through street for the area. So that's going to drive volumes down as well.
I believe that if the tone is that folks are moving down here, they're beginning to embrace this area and live down there, waiting until the bigger picture happens, something there now might encourage more residential development down there, I think is what it is that I'm trying to say. And unfortunately, the only thing, as we've said ad nauseum, is there's absolutely nothing to offer these neighborhoods besides the stop sign.
Okay, any other discussion?
I would like to say I tend to agree with Robin that we're already at 91% of the volume we needed to justify a stop sign. We were just 100 vehicles per day, and that could happen. It just doesn't seem like. I don't think it's a bad alternative even for the interim, because the area is changing. I'll respect that, and I appreciate your patience. I know you see we're struggling with this because we really do want to help you. We really do.
You guys are the experts. I don't know what would be the best fix. Just I could see something could be helpful. So thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Stands. Motion on the floor from Commissioner Hale, seconded by Commissioner George, to disapprove item 5H. Can I have your votes, please? Okay. So item is not disapproved. Well, okay. So that opens up the item again. Is there a motion? Am I correct? Is that how we do it? Yeah. Okay. So is there another motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request for a three-way stop at the intersection of South Chartel and Southwest 5th.
Yeah, let's just clarify that. Staff mentioned all-way because if it turns to a two-way, then it'd be a four, and so...
All-way stop.
So is that your motion,
Yes,
all-way? Okay, so Commissioner Schuline is making a motion to approve item 5H. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Witcher. Okay, any discussion on this item? Okay, a motion to approve item 5H from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Witcher. Can I have your votes, please? All right, item is approved. Okay, item 5I, Mr. and Mrs. James Hall, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73151. Consider request for the addition of east and westbound stop signs on East Britain Road at North Air Depot Boulevard in order to establish all-way stop control. Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, can I have staff input, please?
Okay, you've got all our comments before you. Due to decision site distance issues that are present on the street, we're actually recommending approval of this request as presented.
Okay, we have a motion concerning item 5I.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Commissioner Yonkel. We have a second. Second from Commissioner Jenkins. Any discussion on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5I from Commissioner Yonkel, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, we go to comments from citizens. We do have some people that want to speak. First of all, Mr. Allen, if you'd like to come on up, I have your form. If I can have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Sure. Thank you. Joey Allen, 4801 Northwest 10th Street in Oklahoma City. I apologize for dragging your minds back to transportation for just a second. I really do just have a quick question that I wanted to ask Captain Tompkins, but there were a couple of comments that were raised, or questions that were raised that I think might deserve a further comment. Commissioner Jenkins asked about registering with the Secretary of State. Both of the corporations did register with the Secretary of State. However, they are not registered with the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. There's a difference. And it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that right now the Corporation Commission has said that they don't have any jurisdiction over those companies, and so they're not taking a position and they're not going to allow them to. So we're kind of back to square one with the state that we were at 18 months ago with the city. So what you may or may not be aware that yesterday was the final day to file bills for legislation. There were 3 bills that addressed Title 47 that were filed yesterday, which is the title in the state code that addresses the Corporation Commission dealing with these entities. So the fight's not over yet on the state level. I wanted to mention, I thought the drug test question was an interesting one. Obviously, I need to hire smarter attorneys because it was my understanding that the intent of that in the ordinance was that we were supposed to have drug testing policies in place. Now, we're not a $200 million corporation like Lyft is, and we're certainly not an $18 billion corporation like Uber is. However, Little Kings Transportation over here on 10th Street does test annually before we send our chauffeurs down to be licensed. And we also, according to Department of Transportation regulations, participate in a random drug testing policy in a larger pool. So just in the interest of transparency, you can't go to work at a convenience store, a big box store. You can't go to work anywhere without doing a drug test. And I think not having a drug test policy is just simply irresponsible. I realize that they fulfilled their requirements, but I just, my 2 cents is it's irresponsible. You had asked also about the purpose of Razor and Uber and how those existed. Razor is a shell corporation. It has no assets. Uber, however, as we just mentioned, has billions of dollars in assets. That shell corporation exists to keep you as a rider or me if I'm a driver or anyone else from getting to that $18 billion. Razor has nothing, so they can't get anything except what liability they might be able to provide by their insurance company. Anyway, my 2 cents. Thank you for listening. My real question, Captain Tompkins, is now that we have gone through this process for 18 months, the ordinance is in place, they've got 90 more days before they have to be, their drivers have to be licensed and their vehicles have to be inspected. Is there a plan from the police department to educate the officers as to what Uber and Lyft are and how those people, if they make a traffic stop and the vehicle doesn't have a sticker, if the driver isn't visibly displaying a license as is required by the ordinance, Are they aware of what Uber and Lyft are? Because there's been confusion about that in the past, and obviously we can't, I'm sorry that Sergeant Dancy couldn't stay. Obviously we can't expect those two officers to do all of that. And I know that there was talk about whether they are or aren't accepting street hails. I think it's easier with Lyft because of the big mustache versus Uber, who has something this big in their window. But, you know, is there some way that that's going to be communicated to the officers so that enforcement can start taking place the 1st of May?
Real quick correction, Lieutenant Balderrama, and on behalf of Captain Tompkins.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Well, I didn't think you were Captain Tompkins, but that's what it says up front, so my apologies.
There will be, all this will be reviewed. The Chief of Police will come out with a directive instructing the officers what to do hopefully within those 90 days. But all this has to be reviewed, what passes, what doesn't pass. If they are a company legitimately or not legitimately doing business here in Oklahoma City. But again, a directive is what they usually do with basically instructions for all the officers how to handle that situation, what to cite or what not to cite. So to answer your question, yes, and hopefully it will be within those 90 days.
Okay. And I'm just questioning something that you said. You said if they're approved. I mean, that's done now, right? All we're waiting on now is for the drivers and the vehicles to be inspected, correct? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Kula, is it appropriate for me at this time to ask Mr. Allen a question? Okay. This is really, I understand that your company is more of a limo company.
Correct.
But I'm hoping you have some kind of knowledge of the taxi industry also. I've noticed a flywheel sticker on the back of a lot of the taxis. Yeah. And I infer, and there's a couple of things I've read, that's kind of a app service, so that the taxi companies are kind of morphing into quasi-Uber, Lyft, TNCs. Correct. Is that correct?
Yeah, you'll see, that is correct. That's what Flywheel is. I mean, and when we were going through the discussions last year, Pam Thompson, who spoke today from Yellow Cab, said, you know, she basically had the same technology. Right. And so, yes, there are a number of those out there that the cab companies across the country are participating in, just as a response, if you will, to Uber and Lyft and those kind of companies. Our industry as well. I mean, the nice thing that's occurred from this, from Uber and Lyft coming on into existence in the last few years, is that it's kicked our industry in the behind and moved us into, you know, obviously there's a need for it. We all see the need. You all provided an opportunity for them to come in and work, and we're going to take advantage of that opportunity too. You will see black car companies such as ours form alliances across the country. We already do that, just not with an app. So you will see those kinds of things come to fruition, so that if you choose to do business with a company that has the kinds of policies and procedures and professional chauffeurs and professionally maintained vehicles that we have versus something else, that you can still participate in a program like that and ride in a vehicle like ours, whether it's in Oklahoma City or New York City.
Okay, so it seems like that if I'm Yellow Cab and I have Flywheel, that I'm able to legally accept folks who engage me through a phone app.
Correct.
I'm able to legally accept somebody hailing me on the street. So I'm able, I have access to all of the potential customers out there. There's no obstructions. Whereas we legally, Uber and Lyft, the TNCs, cannot accept hails or they have to be accessed through the app. Is that how you understand it?
That's my understanding of exactly how the ordinance is written. That's correct.
Which is the same as the black cars.
Right.
Yeah, they're not allowed to take hails and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else for comments from citizens? Okay, now we'll go on to item 7, reports from commissioners, et cetera. Let's start with Commissioner Witcher.
Well, this I have no report. I have a comment that I think we do need to. I am sorry that the spirit of our ordinance, and as I mentioned, kind of the historic response to our ordinance has been to provide a drug policy, not to just respond, hey, we don't have one. And with the availability of Flywheel and other means for taxi companies to essentially become TNCs, we're going to have a level playing field, but instead of here, it's going to be here. And I think we need to address the ordinance as quickly as we can. And I would appreciate the opportunity to participate in that if possible.
Well, we still have there is work being done to modify the ordinance in general, I believe. Am I right? There's still, so if we could just add that to the list of things to consider. And
so I gather that that would be through establishing in the ordinance a minimum drug testing policy?
Well, if that's what all comes about from the effort. I mean, what is the intent? And if that's the intent of the commission, if that's the intent of city council, of leadership, city manager's office, et cetera, then the wording just needs to be more specific.
Yeah. Now, we're headed towards, I mean, with the TNCs, we are already at the place where we're relying on their goodwill and the marketplace, granted, but we're relying on them.
Yep.
If there wasn't a need for drug testing at some point, the market wouldn't have asked for it. We wouldn't have done it in the first place. So.
Nope. So it's on the table. Okay? Commissioner Littlefield.
I agree. Quickly, the Traffic Calming Subcommittee, we're going to table meeting this afternoon because this is run so late. We'll meet after the February meeting. We have been able to establish a short list of tools for a toolbox, and we have visited with one planning commissioner about the other side of the coin, which is new developments and what can be incorporated in new plats. So I think very soon you guys might be able to take a look at something that you can put your hands on. There's no other news from Ward 2. Thank you.
Commissioner White.
Nothing to report.
Commissioner Hale.
Just a comment that I'd still have strong reservations about what we approved today, even though I voted for that. The reason I did was we do have an ordinance in place. They did meet the ordinance, but more importantly, as we heard from these drivers, we've had a system in place that's been operating that's not been regulated. So with their approval that we did today, which I'm glad we did, so now we can start the process of regulation.
Good point. Commissioner Shuline.
Thank you, Commissioner Hale. I agree with you 100%. Thank you.
Commissioner Jenkins. Okay. Then we'll work on it. Okay, Commissioner George. Okay, LT. Counselor, any comments or anything? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Yonko.
I understand why you're overlooking me. I've said plenty today.
We've heard enough. Yes, ma'am.
You know what? I do want to say this. My vote changed between Lyft and Uber, and I want to tell you why. I appreciated that he came here and was ready to talk to us. I may not agree. Gee, that's a surprise today. But I appreciate the open dialogue, the willingness to present your point of view. It's healthy to disagree. I'm going to have an opinion. Doesn't mean that that's where we all go. But so it may seem weird that I changed my vote, but I'm with the group. Let's get this process going. Let's get it moving. Let's get it healthy and right, even more right than it is. So I just wanted you to know why I went from a no to a yes. I think if you're an applicant, you need to be here. That's how I feel about it. So I wanted you to understand my change from red to green.
Thank you, ma'am. Counselor now. Okay, staff?
Just our standard list of locations where yield controls have been installed administratively. It was noted in our agenda that we'd have it next month, but we were able to get it for you for this month. And I just want to say thank you to Mike Anderson, who'll be serving with us for the last time today. Come the end of this month, he will become the new head over at Traffic Operations.
Oh, outstanding. Congratulations. Yeah.
We wish him well.
The big cheese, top dog. Okay, any other comments? Anything from anybody? Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion second. Okay, all in favor, let's go. If you want to stay, stay.